Hello, my name is Sandy and welcome to this training video for Adventures in Art. This video is for you if you are a new docent or, let's face it, we've had a lot of downtime. If you are a returning docent that wants to brush up a little or see what's new and different this year. So before I get into that, I just want to say that this is not your average volunteer opportunity. It's not, just signing up to go on a field trip. This one is a big investment. You do need to give of your time and your energy, and you put a lot into it. But also, I think you will get an amazing reward for it. You are giving kids a gift that they really appreciate. Art matters to kids. It is something in their day that's different. Normally, they spend their time there learning what the teacher wants, spitting out the right answer. And when they get to do art, it's something of their very own creation, and they make 100 little decisions on how it's going to go all on their own. So it's very special and important. Also, I want to make sure you understand you do not have to be an artist to be an Adventures in Art docent. If you can do a stick figure and you come to the training, you're good to go. It's not about your skill, it's about bringing this experience to the kids. And I do want to say every school is just a little bit different, so there will be some basics we won't cover. But if you have a question, that's a picky kind of question, ask your school chair. They're going to tell how you do it at your school. If there's one thing we've learned in the last couple of years, it's we need to be flexible. So do keep in mind that the rules could change, or what we're allowed to do or be in the classroom or not be in the classroom could change during the course of this year. So whatever you hear from your school chair is probably the most current, best thing. But just be flexible and we'll make this work. Right now, there's a good chance that it will just be you in the classroom. Usually, I would say find as many helpers as you can to pass things out and make things go smoothly. But this year, it probably is, for most schools, just going to be the docent. And I think the projects this year will be a little bit simpler in supplies because of that. Also, make sure that you do your training on your own. We won't have the big workshops, but we will have videos and you need to be trained. Make sure you take the time to do the projects so that you can teach it well. And sometimes there may even be a teacher who doesn't feel comfortable having you in the classroom. They may teach it on their own, so that could come up. Anyway, just be flexible and let's go. Okay, now let's talk about our philosophy at Adventures in Art. One of the first things that we always tell our docents is don't touch. Don't touch the child's art. Don't help them by doing anything for them. As soon as you do and you draw on their paper, their art, it's not theirs anymore. They feel it. They know that the only reason it's right is because you did it. You did something to it. So resist the temptation, but do demonstrate. So if there's a paper towel nearby, that's highly encouraged. If they have a question, you can show them how it's done. You can point to the paper and kind of show them placement, but don't draw on their paper. Another bit of philosophy is that we do not believe in judgment. And I don't mean like that you would ever go and say a child's art wasn't good, but even the good kind. So as soon as you say, oh, Johnny, I really love your art, or they come up to you and they want to be told that what they did is good. If you say that it is, suddenly all the other kids' ears perk up and they go, oh, is mine good? Is mine good? And pretty soon you have to tell the whole class that their art is good, or you'll have kids feeling like, well, they didn't say it to me, mine's no good. So instead you might, if they ask you if it's good, you can say, oh, you really followed directions, or you can point out, oh, it's very colorful, or something that isn't making a declaration about whether it's good or not. And that goes for you too. You need to set a good example of acceptance by not going in front of the class and saying, oh, my art's no good. I'm not a good artist. It's not about that. It's about trying and trying something new for the first time. So set a good example, and just don't declare your work no good. Another thing to keep in mind is it's better to ask questions about a child's art than to make statements. And one of the things that has happened in the past, as soon as you say, oh, that's such a, cute bunny you drew, you're going to find out that that's a dog. So, and you'll have hurt their feelings. So try hard to ask more than tell, when you observe. I think I mentioned this another time, but the whole process is about the experience, not the outcome. That's why it doesn't matter if you're a terrific artist or not. We also try to stick to the lesson. So if our lesson that day is that we're drawing a zebra and you really like horses better, we're not switching to horses. We go through a lot of trouble choosing the art, choosing the lesson and the project, and it's not yours to make a change. So you can alter a little bit the way you teach something, but you don't, make a major change and shift in the project. And also, if the kids are drawing Mickey Mouse instead of the zebra, you want to discourage that. You want to tell them that they can do that at home on their own time. Or also, sometimes a kid has a go-to thing that they always like to draw. You can say, oh, draw that at home. Today we're going to try this new thing, and encourage them to stick with you and do what you're doing that day. Normally, we would say, if you don't go to the workshop where we learn these lessons, you don't teach. Now, because of our changes this year, we can't say that exactly, but please do the lesson yourself, either in your group, however your school is doing it, or do it at home, because you really don't know what you don't know. A project can seem so simple until you do it and find out the little intricacies that are going to change the way you teach it, and it will just make you more confident too. The day you come in and teach, you're going to feel better if you have done the project yourself. And then one more little quick note, and that is that projects are proprietary, meaning we are paying an artist to come up with this and show it to our kids. And so they don't want you to go put it on the internet as yours, or even necessarily, teach it to a different group that isn't with that school where we have permission. So those are some things to keep in mind. So for some secrets to success in being a docent, we need to do things a little bit differently than we did before, but for sure we still need to do our research. We need to watch our video, we need to read up, know more than you need to know before you go in the classroom. So if you are, teaching about a particular artist or whatever it is, know more, because it'll build your confidence. You'll do a better job explaining to the kids if you feel very good about your content. Of course, make sure you try it. I don't know if you'll be able to do this year because we won't be doing a lot of paint, but I like to tell docents to spy on the drying rack. So if the class before you leaves their art in the art room, go check it out. See what went right, what didn't go right, and you might alter the way you teach it if you see how it went. Also, try to think of a hook. Every kid, all the kids are different ages, so what works for one classroom won't be the same as for another, but see if you can find something to draw them in. For example, a couple of years ago, we did a project on the giant sequoias, and I brought in a tape measure to show how wide the diameter of a sequoia tree really is. Something like that, something to demonstrate to the kids or try to grab their interest is a great idea. And another tip is to set the tone. So when the kids come in the classroom, you are the teacher, you are the person presenting. So don't be on your cell phone, don't be chatting. Greet the kids, act in a professional manner, and they will respect you more and do what you are wanting them to do once they recognize that you're the leader that's there to help them that day. Also, pay attention to that critical first step When you are starting a project, that first line, that first shape is often very important. So for instance, if we're doing like we did Modigliani, it was like a bust, a person's head and their shoulders. If you start that out and the kid has a teeny tiny little head, they can't do the rest of the project. There's no room for the eyes and the nose and the mouth and to do all the things you're describing. So one thing I recommend, don't just stay at the front of the room and demonstrate. Walk around and see what the kids are doing, especially in the very beginning, especially when they're getting started, because that first step can make all the difference in them succeeding and doing the rest of the project. I like to use the word tinyitis. Like my daughter was definitely guilty of it, and it seems like it's really common with kids is they feel comfortable drawing something that's tiny, and usually that's not what we want. So I try to discourage them from having tinyitis. And I kind of said this already, but move, meaning walk around the classroom, check in on what the kids are doing. When I'm teaching, I rarely really finish the project completely. I don't often color everything in or whatever, because I am going around the classroom and making sure that the kids are successful. Another thing that will make you successful at this job is to be a clock watcher. And by that I mean you are really in charge of the timeline for the class. So you don't want to let the kids get stuck on that very first step. And if they do, there's some things that you can do to help them. Sometimes you can just quiz them on, hey, what's your favorite color or animal or, whatever we're doing. Sometimes you can get them unstuck that way. Sometimes they just need to feel in control, and you can make some gentle suggestions and then tell them, start whenever you're ready and see if you can get them off of that. You need to go into the project with a plan and kind of decide how long you're going to take for each step. It's a good idea to look around the classroom and kind of judge, most of the people are done with this step. Let's explain the next step. You can get stuck where if you wait too long between steps, you can lose your audience. They, start chatting and you have to repeatedly bring them back to what you're doing. So you want to leave enough time, but not too much time. And often when I start the class, I'll ask the kids, hey, please don't go ahead. I know you can see where we're going with this, but sometimes we have a reason why we want you to do things in a certain order. And we try to get the kids not to jump ahead and just, take a stab at it. Now, if they do that anyway, we're not going to scold them really. We're just, that is what it is. But we do encourage them to wait for our instruction. One thing that has helped me with pacing is to draw things twice. So often you'll have, say, a whiteboard at the front of the classroom, and maybe you'll have one of the Elmos where you can draw and it's projected. So I find if I maybe draw it once on the whiteboard and once on my Elmo, now I've drawn it twice, the kids will have had a chance to draw it once, and then I can go on to the next step. Another little tip that's nice is to find out what the teacher does to quiet the classroom. Is it, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, or, whatever. There are many techniques like that. So find out what the teacher uses and maybe bring one method of your own as a backup. Okay, so now it's the day of the lesson, and some tips would be to be on time. And by on time, I mean early. Whatever early is allowed. We usually would think like an hour early. You may or may not be able to get into your art room or classroom that early, but just do what you can to be prepared before the lesson starts. That means, if you can, get in, pass out the supplies. We usually have little stickers that you put on the back of the project. Stick those on in advance. Check out your electronics. Does your Elmo work? Etc. There's nothing that will derail your lesson like, having something go wrong, wasting a bunch of time. You get flustered, the kids get bored. If you're prepared, things will go so much better for you. Usually I would say, make sure you have a lot of helpers. I can't say that this year. I have to say, I don't think helpers will be allowed, at least not in the beginning. So all the more reason for you to be prepared. Also, just so you know, we will not be sharing supplies that the kids touch the same thing. So if we use markers, each kid will have markers that are only for them, and then they will get sanitized between classes. So when you're setting up, keep in mind that we don't want kids touching the same stuff. One thing that helps me a lot is to put notes on the whiteboard. So if I have like a particular artist, I'll write their name, I'll write the year that they were born or maybe passed away, and I'll write some art vocabulary. And all of that is helpful. The kids can see the vocabulary, but it also helps me. If I get tongue-tied or forget where I'm going, it's just a little lifeline that I have written on the whiteboard. So that really helps. I already said this, make sure the electronics are on your side, and also invoke the golden rule before you leave your art room or your art cart, whatever you're doing. Make sure that you leave it really nice for the next person, and we'll all get along better. A few more thoughts on supplies. We want to tell the kids about their supplies, the real name of what they are. If it's oil pastels, it's oil pastels, not crayons, One thing we pride ourselves on usually is having interesting supplies and letting the kids try them out. The first few projects this year probably won't be that way because of what I mentioned already with the shared supplies, but do make sure that you use the vocabulary and you tell the kids about the supplies that they're using. This is always kind of the case, like when it comes to art paper or whatever, it's one per child. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is, we just can't keep handing out paper to the kids if they mess up. We don't have the budget for that. Also, they get behind because now they've done 3 steps and they want to start over. And the other reason is you're kind of depriving them of a problem-solving opportunity. If they do something a little, they make a smudge, a line or whatever, this is a chance for them or for maybe you to help them think through what could they turn it into, how could they make it okay, maybe that smudge could become a cloud or some other feature of their art. You can remind them that we're not here to make the perfect piece, we're here to try something out. So we kind of keep it to 1 per customer. There's the balancing act of quantities. I don't think we'll be using paint in the beginning of this year, but I have heard docents be so happy that, that kid wanted more, and I told him no because I didn't want to waste supplies. In general, I think that's really not the right thing at all to do. Unless a kid's being super wasteful or something, we want them to produce the piece of art that makes them happy and that they have in their mind. And so we try to accommodate as much as we can. Also, we try to be kind to Mother Earth. Don't use more than we have to. If we're putting paint on a plate, less is more. Usually you don't need as much as you think you need. And all of the acrylics and stuff, they are a plastic product. So just keep that in mind. If you are using paint, putting it in a little tub that you can put a lid on between classes conserves a lot versus squirting them on a plate and throwing it away. So just keep it in mind. Brushes. Oh my gosh, brushes are one of the most expensive supplies that we have, and they should last over and over if we take care of them. So what you need to do with a brush is if it's dirty, you wipe it off, then you put it in the water, and then you wipe it again. So you wipe, wash, wipe. That way your water doesn't get super dirty. You can teach the kids that method. It's wonderful. And every school will be just a little bit different. So if you have a question, ask your school chair. Well, let's take just a minute to talk about psychology, or I say tears and fears. Um, this is a volunteer opportunity where there will be some kids who get upset or frustrated, partly because this is open-ended, because there's, you know, they might have a vision that in their head that they want to produce, or they might think that the only right way is to have it look just like yours. And it is natural for them to get a little frustrated, but you can really help them out by prefacing your project by reminding them that this is the first time we're trying this and that we're just trying it. We're doing it for the experience, and it's okay. However it turns out is okay. They can try it again at home if they need to, but the final product is really not super important when we're doing this. We're giving it a try. Also, just bring in your best energy. So make it a special day, be positive and encouraging, and acknowledge that what they're doing can be tricky. Also, say yes to copying. I know the kids are taught copying is bad and we shouldn't do it. This is a time where copying is actually what we want them to do a lot. We want them to give it a try to copy what we're doing. And that is how master artists learn. They copy each other. They learn the techniques, and then they go off and do their own thing. And then a quick word on erasing. There are some people that say, no, never give a kid an eraser. There's no mistakes. I personally find that a recipe for frustration. So I like to allow kids to erase, but there are kids who will never be happy, erase so much that they put a hole in their paper. So you have to kind of look out for that. If you have a kid that's really never going to be happy with their work, then you need to encourage them to just move on and not keep erasing. Are there mistakes in art? Well, some people say there aren't. I kind of think there are, because we often mean to do something and we don't achieve exactly what we want, so it feels like a mistake. But I think instead of saying there's no mistakes in art, you say it's okay to make mistakes in art. That's how we learn. It's fine. There will be no grades on these papers, and that's how we learn. So it's okay to make mistakes in art. But if we just say that there aren't any, maybe we aren't really hearing what the kids are concerned about, or maybe we actually lose an opportunity to teach them how to do something, an aha moment. If we just say, oh, it's all fine, but we let's pretend their shadows go two different directions, then we aren't really teaching them a basic thing about art. So what you need to do is show them, but it's fine. Whatever they did, we're not going to care. We just do want to learn. One technique that I have done in the past is to take docent art when we all went to workshops, or you can do two pieces of art yourself, now that we're doing it on our own, and hold them up and say, which is the right piece of art? And the kids will be like, oh, like maybe they'll pick a piece or not. But the kids who have been around the block a couple of times will say they're both right. So try to get the kids away from thinking that there's only one right way to do it. Another thing that is very important to hands-on art is that we make this art education. The very reason that we are allowed in the classroom and valued by the school district is because we do provide art education. So use the vocabulary, even if you're teaching kindergarten and you think, oh, they're not going to understand the word perspective or parallel or whatever it is. Use it anyway, and then use another descriptor that they will understand. That's how we build vocabulary, is we add new words and we relate them to old words, and suddenly they have a new concept. So we want to make sure that we provide value that way. Don't skip the art history. Sometimes, we think, oh, the kids will be bored with that. Just tailor it to your audience. So if you have younger kids, make it much shorter, much simpler. If you have older kids, you can usually make it a little longer and teach them a little more. Sometimes, especially at the middle school level, you're very short on time. So you might have to squeeze your art history in while the kids are painting, like, or drawing. You can, while they're doing a step, you can fit in a few facts, but try your darndest not to skip it. I like to use the words like tricking your eye or making magic. You can teach kids, in the examples here that you see, we're showing kids how to trick your eye into thinking that you're seeing something off in the distance when really it's just all the same flat piece of paper. So that's kind of a term that they like. Tie things together. Try to tie a lesson from last year with something that you're doing this year. And these two examples, one is the sequoia tree and one is rows of lavender going off in the distance. In both cases, the kids are learning about vanishing point and perspective. So remind them about the old lesson if you can with the new lessons so that they can make those connections. And some people think you should never correct a child, but I feel like if you hold all your comments, you're going to have them miss out on that aha moment to go, oh, that's why it looks like it disappears, is because it goes smaller in the distance. We touched on this a little bit, but make sure you gear your lesson to the audience. So if you're talking about inches to a kindergartner, maybe you'd be better to say the length of your finger or the width of your hand or something that they can more readily relate to. You can use both terms, but make sure that you keep the kids' level in mind. We usually give a project, that's geared often towards the sweet spot of grades 3 to 5. If you are teaching younger kids, you might make it a little less detailed, leave out some things that make it trickier, but don't overdo that. You'll be surprised what your kids can actually do. So when I say to prep or not to prep, sometimes we'll have a project where, the docents want to draw that center line or, whatever it is. And if you're erring, I would err towards letting the kids do it. If you really don't know if they can do it or not, maybe you can try it on your own child, but err towards letting the kids try something. Also, keep in mind that younger kids are going to need each step spelled out as you go, where older kids, often you can give them a few steps at once and then kind of let them be independent. They love it when they can just really get in the zone and create something without being interrupted all the time. And hopefully that gives you some tips for getting started. Go out and be that art lady or that art guy. You're going to go to a grocery store someday and some kid's going to be telling their mom, hey mom, that's that art lady. And that's going to be because you made a difference in their life and you brought something special to the classroom. I think you're going to love it. It's such a fun thing to be an art docent, and congratulations for signing up. Thanks for being here.